visual media, it's Let's Go Youngstown, bringing you the city's hottest entertainment. On today's episode, photographer Sean Posey, with musical guests Wren Rooster and Third Class. Don't touch anything. We'll be right back after these messages with Let's Go Youngstown.
What makes you decide to go take pictures of old structures and old buildings?
Years ago, before I was even a photographer, my father took me through a bunch of the old steel mills down in Camel in Youngstown, Ohio, telling me the history about it, and telling me, oh, well, these mills, all these people used to work here. These huge, giant buildings that you're not used to seeing nowadays. Empty buildings, or sometimes there were still things in them, like people's clothes and old pieces of machinery. I'm like, wow, wouldn't it be interesting to take pictures of this? So years later, when I actually knew how to take pictures, I came back to Youngstown first and I started shooting all the old historical structures I could find, like factories, even like people's houses. I started going into houses and photographing old houses where people had just up and left all their stuff there. I mean, some of these houses were probably sitting for maybe 20 or 30 years. And so
some of them ain't the safest place to be in.
No, not at all.
So how do you go about preparing your gear to go on one of these photo shoots?
Well, most of the time I try to take enough stuff so that if something happens, like I bring a backup camera body. But, and usually a couple lenses if I want to maybe do some close-up detail shots and some more wide-angle shots. But I've always been a believer in not bringing too much equipment, especially not a lot of expensive equipment, just because you don't know. I mean, nothing serious has ever happened to me, but you don't know what you could run into in some of these places.
Right.
Some of them are, or most of them are not in the best neighborhoods. The buildings themselves, you don't know if there's going to be people there, or scrappers, or who knows what going on. So I try not to bring too much stuff that would make it look obvious that like hey, there's a guy carrying around $10,000 in camera equipment. I try never to do that.
Well, how much thought process goes into you scouting these locations? Do you just happen to run across these places, or what goes into that? Sometimes
both. Sometimes I usually travel with a group of people. So if we're going someplace farther away, like say Buffalo, which I went to last year, that's something where we try to map it out. We're like, okay, what are the really cool places that we can find online in Buffalo? Like there's a place called Buffalo Central Terminal, which is a massive abandoned train station. So we're like, okay, we got to go to that place, right? And then a lot of the times you'll go there and we'll be driving around, going to places that we know about, and you'll find a whole bunch of places just driving around. And sometimes I'll go someplace, like I go to Pittsburgh a lot, and I won't go with anything in mind. I'll just go and just drive around neighborhoods where I think I could find something interesting.
On some of the pictures that you have, can you give us a little bit of history on the picture and why you chose to photograph this particular place?
Sure. One of the cooler places I first photographed was an old Youngstown sheet and tube building in Camel. And there was all kinds of equipment in it. There was time cards still there from the last day the mill was open. Like when people left, apparently
I've seen that one that said 1972.
Yeah, people didn't take their gloves or their equipment. They just left everything there. So places like that, big factories.
Was it an evacuation?
Yeah, I don't know. You wonder. It's like, I've been in places where there's still paperwork with people's social security numbers and work records. And you're like, wow, company didn't even take this stuff. They just leave it here. So you find some wild stuff in old factories.
So you're out taking pictures of all these different things, documenting everything. If pictures say 1,000 words, what picture speaks the most to you?
Probably there's a photograph I took inside a Youngstown sheet and tube building of just a massive wide angle shot of all this stuff, equipment laying on the floor, and there's this huge hook hanging from the ceiling that he used to carry around, like probably beams and girders and stuff like that. And it's just like the perfect closed factory shot. And that's like one of the photographs that the most people have like emailed me or showed interest in. So it's probably maybe one of the most memorable photographs I've taken, I think.
Okay, when you're out taking these pictures, how do you gain access to the location? how do you get access to all these different places?
Well, I think I've only maybe been in one place where I actually like found out who owned it and like formally got access. So technically it's usually trespassing. Most of the time, even if you wanted to be honest about it, you probably couldn't even figure out who owned the building. I mean, some of these buildings have been sitting here for decades, and sometimes we got to get really elaborate. Like you got to scale fences and, you know, climb through windows, and you know, basically you've got to, you've got to have some dexterity in some of these places to get around.
So if you see an image that you've got to capture, you do whatever it takes to capture that image.
Yeah, yep.
Amazing.
And sometimes, you know, sometimes you really got to go all out and, you know, think about equipment that you might need, like flashlights and, steel-toed boots, because a lot of these places there's nails, you know, and you can get a nail in your foot pretty easily. So things like that. After a while, you start to figure out what kind of special equipment you'll need to get.
Now, how do you fare when it comes to, you know, because some of these spots I know, rusty nails, floor may be caving in, ceiling may be falling in. How do you prepare yourself as far as safety? Do you take people with you? Do you have, like,
I have gone to a couple places by myself, but that's something I try not to do anymore. It's always best to go with someone else, because like you mentioned, probably the most dangerous thing is a lot of these places have what I call soft floors. So you get in them right away, and you know there's a possibility, if you're not careful, you're going to go through the floor. And I've gone through a couple of floors, not all the way through, but like down, you know, to where I just catch myself.
My cameraman's experience going through a floor before itself.
So when you think about that, if you're by yourself, you go through the floor, I mean, that could be the end of the line for you. So it's always best to like go with a group of people. Usually the best bet is to follow where the animal tracks. Usually there's deer and other animals that come through here. That way you don't end up going through a hole in the ground or anything like that. Hole in the foundation.
Well, with narrow, you're going to have a bad day.
Yeah.
Okay, now, if you had access to your dream location, you got everything you need, steel-toed boots, flashlights, everything, what would be your dream location to take pictures of?
There's a city called Pripyat outside of Chernobyl, where the nuclear meltdown happened. And when it happened, they evacuated the whole city. And it was a big, massive city with a amusement park in it and everything. And to this day, the radiation levels have gone down, so apparently it's somewhat safe, at least to visit. That whole city is just sitting there exactly as it was in 1986. So that would be, I think...
I'm almost getting the impression that your photography is almost like a thrill ride for you.
Some of it is, some of it is. I mean, mostly I want the photographs, but sometimes it's, you know, there's kind of an adventurous aspect to some of these places, for sure.
Cool. Now, who do you admire as a photographer? Who do you look up to?
There's a guy I really like whose work's a lot different from mine, but I like his eye, I like the way he sees. His name's James Noctway. He's a photojournalist, and he was really a war photographer. I think he still might work, but for decades he was a war photographer, and he was in everything from Nicaragua to Bosnia, the Iraq War. He was even there at 9/11 when the planes crashed into the World Trade Center. So this guy's been everywhere, and he's got he's got a really good eye, and I just admire his sense of composition in the moments that he captures. So.
Now, if our viewing audience wanted to find out more about Sean Posey and your work, where would they go to find that out?
On Facebook, Sean Posey Photography. My website is Sean Posey at photoshelter.com. That's where I have most of my work. Also, if you Google my name, I have work on a lot of different websites, various different work. I've done a lot of Rust Belt stuff on different websites. My work is it's pretty easy to find on the internet.
Thanks for stopping by, Sean. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much for having me. Appreciate it.
together.
This project,
country western project.
It's like a country western folk project. It's called Wren Rooster, and Katie Ann has her own project that she's done forever, and I have a band called The Zoo, and then we've been dating for 2 years, and we always make music, and we do these little acoustic shows together. But a lot of this material was written, it's original stuff we wrote for this project, and it's kind of in the vein of like a Johnny and June or Emmylou Harris and Rodney, and you know, there's all these kind of old country duos that you see out there, and it's kind of that singer-songwriter, a little more of a country feel, but definitely not like a modern country feel, probably much more like a 70s and earlier country feel.
Twist it all around. I want love to wrap my fingers gently and them in a doorway, my face into the ground. I want love to murder my mother and send her off to somewhere like home or up above. I want love to change my friends to enemies, change my friends to enemies. Show me how it's all my fault. No, I won't let love disrupt the rupture. No, I won't let love disrupt the rupture of me. No, I won't let love disrupt the rupture of me anymore. I want love to walk right up and bite me, grab a hold of me and fight me, leave me dying on the ground. I want love to wrap my open, cover up my ears and never let me hear a sound. I want love to forget how you offended me or how you had defended me when everybody's brought me down. No, I want love to change my friends to enemies, change my friends to enemies. Show me how it's all my fault. No, I won't let love disrupt the rupture, interrupt me. No, I won't let love disrupt the rupture, interrupt me. No, I won't let love disrupt the rupture, interrupt me anymore.
We've been together since 1999. We started the band when we were freshmen in high school. My brother Jack was the last to join. It was first me and my friend Peppy who were doing raps over keyboard demos. And then he was like, "Can I come and join the band?" And we were like, "Only if you promise not to hang out with us otherwise, because we're too cool for you." And now he's too cool for us.
So how would you describe your style?
We play what a lot of people these days call indie rock. When we started, we called it alternative rock. I'm sure there'll be another name for it soon. But we like to call it quirk pop music, quirky pop music.
If you're off with someplace last and you're still just living fast, come back and live away from me alone. And your fancy things stay good and your dress is flowing like you should. Come back and
1994 or 5, my babysitter turned MTV on. And I think I wasn't like allowed to watch TV, or I wasn't allowed to watch that or something, so I hadn't like been into that scene. So then, yeah, then after that, I knew I wanted to make some music, had some friends in middle school get together and play music.
How's everything sound? Everything okay? Okay. Musicians? Okay.
Right now I'm listening to a band called Noah and the Whale, which is a good group. And you said who inspired us? Or
who inspires you?
Who inspires me? You know, those guys inspire me because they do a lot of really fun pop music, but with good lyrics. I think as we got older, lyrics started to matter more and more to us. So surprisingly, as I get older, people like Bob Dylan and Tom Petty and people like that just do like really simple, like straightforward love songs have really like gotten to me, and I want to try to make more heartfelt music. I think when we started when we were younger, we did like crazy, weird lyrics, and that's awesome, but I think we're getting a little bit more like down to the heart as we get older. And so it's fun to write kind of like serious love songs or songs about the past, things like that. It's fun. Like basic is good sometimes with lyrics.
So as a group, you would say that you're developing?
Yeah, we're developing, but we're simplifying. It's weird. When you're young, you just have so much energy and you want to get all crazy and go every which way. And as you get older, you start streamlining a little bit and knowing what your style is and admitting that you maybe write the same song over and over again, but it's a good song.
It's a shame. It's a shame. Blowing you spiral over the carpet. It's a shame. It's a shame. Blowing you spiral over the carpet like that makes my skin bottom up green. Makes my skin bottom up green. Blowing you spiral over the carpet like that makes my skin bottom up green. Makes my skin bottom up green. Drug inside your wrist, drug inside my wrist, drug inside my wrist is clean. My wrist is clean. A drug inside your wrist, a drug inside my wrist, a drug inside my wrist is clean. My wrist is clean from all
inside my home, inside my home, inside my home. Thanks, guys.
We do have 5 new songs, and we're going to probably record them in some form this year. We have gone on a few tours, and we'd like to do that again as well. So hopefully we'll be doing steady shows, a few new songs, trying to release some new things.
Next time on Let's Go Youngstown, Anthony Angelo stops by Strikers Express to find out what's good on the menu. Then we'll take you inside the Youngstown Arab American Festival as we talk with the organizer and show you highlights from the event. We'll also meet the guys behind City Kids Care and find out how they provide safe, fun events for the children of Youngstown. You won't want to miss this episode of Let's Go Youngstown. For past episodes and extended coverage, log on to dpvisualmedia.com.